Welcome back to the Work Cultured podcast. We're excited to have you here today. Our guest on the show today is Burke Walker. He's the Chief People Officer for Spring Venture Group. So yet another C-suite HR professional, which is such a good perspective to get. So Burke, man, why don't you tell us about yourself, how you got to where you're at, and then we will dive in.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jason. It's great to be a part of it. I appreciate it and look forward to the conversation today. I started in human resources many years ago. It seems like now, certainly 20 plus years, really almost 30. But interesting, I actually never intended to be in HR.
Wow.
Was not my career path. I had an internship at a local company here in Kansas City to start with, and it was not in HR. I got to know the HR person that was running it, and got to do a little bit more work with her. And she said, well, next year, why don't you come back as an HR intern? I thought, well, that'd be good. I mean, I like people. I like the different things we got to work on that summer. And so then I came back as an HR intern. Still wasn't sure I wanted to do HR. And in undergrad, I really attached to the law, the legal side of it. So I thought, maybe I want to be a lawyer. But fortunately, I had a great mentor, great instructor, professor, whatever, that I talked to quite a bit around it. And he said, look, if you're not committed to going 3 years of law school, maybe you want to try something first before you do. If you are, great, go do that. But it's a big commitment. And so I thought, I don't know that I'm really ready to sign up for another 3 years of school. And so I ended up getting a great opportunity in HR as a recruiter. And the career took off from there. And I love it. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to progress it to the point of being a chief people officer today. And I really enjoy all the aspects of HR. It's been a great career.
Yeah. And for at least a decade, from what I'm seeing on your LinkedIn, you've been the head of these HR groups, and many of them pretty large companies. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I've been fortunate to be able to progress the career, start as a recruiter, and then just progress my way up to be able to be the head of HR for, that's probably about right. I started as the head of HR for Applebee's, and then moved to become the head of HR as the chief human resource officer at NASB, and then now here with Spring Venture Group as the chief people officer.
Very cool. Well, I did warn you, we have a question that we ask all of our guests. And so we'll get the juices flowing here. Burke, what's a mistake that you have made in leadership that you'll never forget?
Yeah, I one that's very vivid, and one that I think really has actually, I would say, certainly transformed or made a significant impact on my leadership and my career in general. And I remember it well from, it was one of my first big leadership opportunities I got. And I remember the opportunity being available, and I made a play for it. Like, I went after it proactively to say, I want this opportunity. I'd like to take this. And it was a bigger role. So it would have been my first kind of big leadership role. And I had prior leadership opportunities, but this was the big one. And there were people who had more experience, et cetera, but I was given the opportunity. And I remember it still to this day. I mean, I started out in the position and didn't go quite as well as I would have liked. And part of it, I think, was a lot is I felt like I needed to come in and just like, okay, I got to show them I have all the answers. I know everything about this job. I can do it. And one of my big things is I'm a big believer in just positional power versus personal power in leadership. And I think fundamentally, at the end of the day, that's kind of the root of a successful leader, is those who can balance the two of those. For me, I was out of sync. I felt like I was balancing it more with positional power than personal power at the end of the day, trying to prove my worth in the role. And I remember getting a 360 on that, and my leader helping me coach through it all. And I got some feedback on there that really hit me kind of hard. But it was needed at the time. And it really helped me at that point to really make a change in some of the leadership style and approaches I had and I was taking. And to this day, I think about it and constantly reflect on it. And it's really been an impact to my growth. So although a painful moment in my career, really one that helped me progress, I think, to become a better leader and really focus more on that personal side than the positional. Although positional is important, you have to have it as part of the role. But where you really get the influence, you drive results, is really on that personal side.
That's a great story, and I love that. And it's so good. I just want to stay here and let's dive into that. Tell me more about how you would define the difference between personal power and positional power.
Yeah. So when you think about it, I mean, you're given a leadership role, which then comes with some level of a positional power. I mean, you're in charge of individuals, you're in charge of decisions, et cetera. So that's really what you've been granted with the positional power. It just comes with the nature of accepting the position. And so, but if you, and then you got the personal side. So let me just go there. And the personal side is all about how you win through influence, empathy, support, those kinds of things that you can build up over time as you build those relationships. But if you rely too heavily upon that positional power where you're just being, I'm the boss, I'm going to make these decisions without consulting, et cetera, then people become a little bit maybe resentful. Certainly people
Yep.
are more obligated to do tasks, to do responsibilities, to complete things versus the personal side, which is when you get to the personal side is where you build that engagement, those strong relationships that in my core belief, you get ultimately to discretionary effort, which is really the ultimate goal of what you want to be able to get from any individual is that discretionary effort. Meaning I don't just clock in from the 8 to 5 time frame and I do my job well, but I actually want to do more. I'm engaged. I look forward to coming to work. I have the energy, those types of things. And so if you can build up that personal standpoint, I think any leader can really be successful. So I know it sounds easier said than done, but it's a critical component that I think at times leaders that really struggle have that out of balance. And and so you've got to be able to find that appropriate component.
When somebody is out of balance, what do you think is the X factor? Is it an emotional intelligence type of thing going on? Or is it a set of skills that they're missing? What do you think is out of balance?
Yeah, I think it could be a number of things depending upon what the individual is and where they are in their career. I think for me, it was early on in my career, so I didn't really know any different.
Yeah.
Right. And I hadn't really developed as much as I would have. And I do think that ties ultimately back to emotional intelligence to some extent because experience allows you to do more of that. But sometimes I think it's just pride and ego. There are just certain individuals that feel like I want the power and authority. And you might, I'll often ask leaders, why do you want to be in leadership? Like, what is it about leadership that makes you want to be a part of it? Because it can be stressful. It can be a tough role. And sometimes you'll hear those things of, I just can't wait to make my own decisions. I can't wait to just lead a team and tell them what to do. And you're just like, that's not going to work out well for you.
Right.
If you continue with that mentality. So I think part of that just comes with those two things. It's either level of experience with emotional intelligence, and then also just having the right mindset. Do you have more of a servant leadership mindset, or are you about the power and authority that you get? And it'll be much harder to move up in the ranks of leadership if you continue to kind of have that mentality. So you have to coach it out of them. Sometimes it's maturity. Sometimes it just takes time. But and there are some who just never figure it out and then just ultimately struggle really in leadership roles.
Yeah. Or they work in an organization where the organization doesn't have the cultural mindset that you're expressing right here. There are people who can excel and succeed, at least in terms of their rank and position, because they lean into that positional power. They're not effective leaders, but they are coming across as big leadership types, and the organizations are just blind to the ripple effect that has. And so they promote them through the ranks, and you've got just, these terrible leaders sometimes at the top who, see power as some finite resource, and they have to have all of it.
Yeah. And to be successful, and they feel that. And some of it, unfortunately, you see it modeled through other leaders. And so dependent upon who they're mentored under, who they're around, they pick it up from some of those leaders. And then they're like, okay, well, I need to be like that leader. And then you have to, unfortunately, it is a cultural component at that point, which is a much bigger problem. You hope it's an isolated one where, again, it's back to that just experience, maturity component that you need to gain over time to get there. But yeah, I just think it's so critical to really build that at the end of the day. And any successful leader that you look at and study, in my view, you read about it, it's that personal side where they spend that time to really get it, and then they can drive those results. Yeah. I
mean, there are bull in the china shop, quote unquote, leaders that get temporary results, but they can't build a sustainable system of I mean, what we would call culture. They can't build a culture that thrives long term and has excited, engaged employees that are getting that discretionary effort that you referred to a minute ago.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think as you continue to do it, they're just going to struggle as a leader. But unfortunately, there are those who do it, who still learn it, and you have to go through that learning curve. I felt like I went through the learning curve.
Same.
And but again, I think sometimes the greatest lessons you learn are from failures versus
Yep.
successes. And fortunately, I had a great leader at the time who really helped me through that period of time to with a different lens, good coaching. So I mean, I also think it takes great people around you to help you with that. I mean, leadership can
Absolutely.
be a lonely spot at times. Um, so surrounding yourself with great people who can help coach, mentor, bounce ideas off of. And in that moment, I had a great one.
So great. Love to hear that. You've been now at Spring Venture Group for a little over 2 years as the CPO. I would assume coming into something like that, it takes you at least 6 months, maybe a whole year to really be fully in the pocket to where you're able to influence. I mean, like you said, with personal power balanced with positional power, you can't come in and go nuclear. So I'm curious, now that you're past that 2 year mark, what are some of the big levers that you've been maybe pulling on to shift and change and improve on the culture that existed when you first came on?
Yeah, I think when you come into any organization, those first 90 days or so are really critical. And so it's a learning curve. I think you're just trying to soak up every knowledge, information you can around why we do things today, ask a lot of questions versus coming in trying to, trying to really influence or change things then. And so there's a lot of learning. I think the other part that is great about the HR career for me in general is a transferable skill set. So I've been fortunate to be in multiple different industries. So not only are you trying to learn the way that the culture works and HR components, you're also learning the industry at the same time, which I think is exciting and fun and really engaging within that. So I think as I've taken all that in, then you really start to figure out where are the greatest opportunities to impact the culture. Like what type of culture do we have, number one, and then two, where do we want that culture to be? And as you interview others and you talk to them, that's where you start to create the roadmap, for going forward. And one of the things that I think is really important is as a support function for HR, as HR is a support function for the business is, what are we doing that leaders want you at the table? What are we as an HR function making sure that we're there adding value, that when they think about a problem that they need to solve, that their first thought in their head is, I got to talk to my HR partner about that, or I've got to talk to my HR leader or someone there to help me solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you create that value and you create that seat at the table. So we've really tried to do that, since I've been here through various HR initiatives and strategies and approaches with that. But
so way beyond, I need a new position set up or I need compliance and paperwork done. You're really partnering with the leaders in the organization.
Yeah, trying to build that relationships. At the end of the day, relationships are where you really move the needle and make that influence to happen. And that's why I think those are so critically important. I mean, HR will always, just like anything, you'll always have your transactional components to it. But to me, that's just a component of it. The real value is where you can build those relationships, have influence, and really look to drive change. And that's the culture we try to create is, it's a little bit of this mentality that when you see an opportunity, try to work to solve the problem versus that's not my problem to solve. You need to go talk to X, Y, Z. It's like take a level of ownership with it and take it from there. I think I heard that at one point, around the Disney mentality that is you're in a theme park, if you ever talk to any employee there, that they can't just be like, that's not my job. They have to take you to somebody or help solve the problem for you if it's not something they can directly control. And I think that's a mentality we've tried to drive is, hey, if we have an opportunity, jump in and help anybody to make the culture of the organization better.
Yeah, that's really cool. Sounds like it was already pretty healthy when you joined and you've seen it continue to be a pretty strong culture there.
Yeah, I would definitely say, Spring Venture Group's had a great culture. around it. It's a private equity firm that's grown significantly over the years, but along the way, one of the strengths it has is its culture, and leaders get strong results on engagement surveys. So I mean, there are a lot of positive things within that, and then what we try to do is just build upon that to try to take it to the next level and keep building on it to make it an even better place to work.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear about a holdings group or a PE group that is focused on culture. There's a stigma of, oh, it's private equity. Okay, they're all about money. How do we get more money? And sometimes the people element can be lost, but it doesn't sound like that's happening there, which is really encouraging.
No, I think, yeah. I mean, definitely. Obviously, you've got to make the money. Those things are all important components of it, and they're never not going to matter. But you're right. I mean, when I interviewed to join the company, a big part of that was what's the type of culture, what's the type of leader at the top, what's the senior leadership team like, and I will tell you the team is extremely focused on culture and people and the importance of it, and so that helps. So when you have the conversations at that table, you have an engaged audience who cares about it versus just dismissive or fit it in when you can. But it's a priority. And so that makes a big difference, because I think culture, one of those things that it's always that inevitable question is like, who owns culture? It's always that question that's a little bit nebulous. I think it starts somewhat at the top, right? And the senior leadership team is setting priorities, policies, direction that absolutely impacts culture. But at the end of the day, true culture is owned, I think, by the direct leaders of the day-to-day employees. And so, but I think it does start at the top.
I agree. I'm curious with the landscape of work constantly changing, particularly post-COVID. What are some of the challenges that you've faced or are currently facing? We ask that because, our listeners like to know that we're not alone and we're all struggling. So I'm just curious, what around culture specifically, whether that's hiring or leadership, what are you guys facing right now that are challenges?
Well, I think we have a lot of similarities as others too. I mean, we have our own headwinds and challenges that we're facing and areas of opportunity for sure. So many have faced with the post-COVID world of return to the office, not return to the office, and we struggle or have that as a component we're always trying to figure out. And by no means have we figured it out, but we continually work on it because we're primarily a hybrid remote organization. So that in itself, as so many have struggled with, is how do you drive that culture component of it? How do you balance out the in-person side to the remote side? And I think, we've worked on that. We've tried to create a culture where it feels inclusive no matter where you sit. But that's a real struggle that we face. It's just that component of it. And we've made a conscious decision. Our CEO and the SLT senior leadership team have made a cognizant decision to not force people back. We've really made that point, and that we want a culture where we can operate that. We want the flexibility within that as long as the work's getting done. And so balancing that component out with the pros and cons is certainly a constant challenge as to how we do it.
Yeah, it's are people engaged? Are they getting the work done? You mentioned the 8 to 5 earlier, and frankly, that discretionary effort, when we see it, give me 9 to 3. I don't care. If you're killing it and 100%. Everything's getting done with excellence, those are the kinds of things that don't really matter. The question of whether or not people come back to the office is, how do we be stewards of our employees? Like if we know that 100% in office isn't as effective as having some remote, but we also know that fully remote isn't as effective, then we need to create that environment. And what's tough is, how much do we mandate? What do we force? And how do we make sure that it feels inclusive and that people aren't just like getting disrupted? I mean, it's not an easy solve. Companies are facing this problem in a major way right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't think there's a silver bullet or any perfect solve for this. Those organizations that made the decisions to bring people back, I don't fault it. I mean, that's a decision that you have to make culturally and what you feel is best for your organization. We've personally made the decision not to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, we have really tried to articulate when it's important to be in person and when certain things are important to be in person. And we talk a lot about what's the purpose of the building. And is the purpose of the building to bring people in to monitor them, to just make sure they're working their hours? Or is the purpose of the building when you are in person is to collaborate, work together, create the culture, that engagement component? And that's what we've really tried to focus leaders on, is like, take that mentality versus I need to see you in the office. Because it's back to a point you made that I think is spot on. At the end of the day, I'm not concerned with the hours you work or where you necessarily even work those, whether you need to get your oil changed, whatever it might be, as long as you're getting your job done and you're doing it well with care and consideration. At the end of the day, that's what I think. If you drive that type of an accountability and culture, you'll have more success than trying to put too much structure and control over it. I use the term a lot, freedom in a framework. And so create the framework, but allow the freedom in there for people to move, because most don't want to be told what to do. So, I mean, as an example around those things, so I've made the decision with my team and how we work it is I like my one-on-ones to be in person. So we have those every other week. And then we do the HR leadership team meeting in person. So those have been tried to be a culture. We try to have a day of the week at least in the office with a team. But people come and go, variations throughout that. I know others throughout our org have done similar types of things to try to drive that. And I think that's worked. Charles trying to connect, because we do have a remote workforce that's outside of the Kansas City area. That's where we're headquartered. So trying to ensure how you keep that group engaged as well is always a challenge. But
is it the people who aren't in the Kansas City metro, are they like everywhere, or are they kind of focused? Like I see that there's, quite a few probably in Texas and Arizona. Do you also have just the scatter plot of, one-off people working out of their house as well?
We do. We have them all around the United States, from Florida to so many states. So we are scattered around here or there. I mean, so yes, we do. So you have to balance that out, and you have to take that in consideration what we do, whether we do company events, which of course are going to be here where we're headquartered. So you have to think about them. So we try to do various things around that employee experience to take that into account when they can't necessarily participate. So we're constantly having to think about that whenever we do anything that's headquarter driven or local Kansas City presence, to try to keep that engagement. And again, I don't know, again, we found the silver bullet or the perfect way to do it, but I do think leaders are cognizant of it. I do think we have it front of mind to ensure that we can keep everyone engaged as much as we can with it. That connection is I think that's so important, is that connection and how you have that.
Yeah. I really like that golden nugget of freedom with a framework. It's catchy, easy to remember, and it really does capture that autonomy plus accountability mentality of, we're going to kind of encourage and create systems around the things that really matter, but we're going to give you flexibility on the things that, for us to try to dictate would just be counterproductive and micromanaging and annoying. I imagine that helps with employee engagement quite a bit.
Yeah, I like to think it does, and that's why we've tried to create and adopt that mentality in general, and trust your employees. They're going to do what they need to do, and then hold them accountable, set the standards and the expectations around it. But I think that flexibility helps, and it helps with retention. It also helps with attraction of talent as well, balanced out with when in person makes sense. I think it's still important to have a component of in person, where you can sit across the table and have conversations. Or if you're looking to solve a complex issue or struggle or something that might not be going as well in the business, it's a great time to pull a group together to come into the office and work through those kinds of things. So again, it's finding that creating a framework for it all, but the flexibility to do it as needed.
Yeah. You said the trust word, and that's a big one. And I think that I like to think that most people are people we can trust. And there are definitely people that we shouldn't. All right. But do we create a framework and a system around the people that we shouldn't trust, and therefore piss off all the people that are already trustworthy? Or do we create the environment for the right people in the right seats, and the crappier ones will weed them out over time. It's just,
Yeah.
it's so much more effective to not take off your best employees by creating something to address the smaller percentage of employees that aren't any good.
Yeah, I mean, trust is the foundation of what you do, and I think you're constantly building that through your relationships, right? Your relationships of
Mhm.
trust. And I think you really said it. And it's, I mean, most people. I mean, I think most people really want to do well. They want to do well in their job, right? I think that's what we do as humans. Everyone wants to be successful and do their job well.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of one of those things. Growing up playing sports and other mentality, other corporate worlds where you hate to punish the masses for the few. And
Yeah.
that's the thing where you like, okay, if there are those that aren't doing their job, that aren't trustworthy, then I think certainly deal with those situations as you probably need to deal with them. And I don't think you want to tolerate them as a leader or as an organization, because then it just creates a very negative culture if you allow that to fester. But deal with it as needs be as a one-off
Yeah.
situation versus the
Yeah.
masses, to go, okay, because we had a handful of these individuals that we felt weren't working, therefore we're taking remote option away from the masses. Like that is not a culture certainly I want to be a part of or certainly drive. So, building those relationships of trust, having just candid conversations where you don't feel
Yep.
like it is working, like that's just where it works well, is when you have that back and forth and an open dialogue.
Yeah.
And deal with those as one-offs, my opinion.
I agree completely. I like what you said too, that people want to do a good job. Nobody's on their commute home, just really mad at themselves because they put in too much effort. Like, oh gosh, I did too well today. Oh, but there are plenty of people that, feel crappy about the fact that they did a half-assed job at work. Right. And so let's trust that most people are going to want to do excellent work.
Yeah, assume positive intent. And be curious. Ask the questions if you feel like something's there, as opposed to making a assumption or some of those things that work. So yeah, I mean, people want to do a good job. Do we all have days where things just aren't working or it doesn't sync? Sure, and and we may drive home from work some days and we're like, I'm not even sure what I accomplished today. But you you hope you have far more days where you're like, hey, we had an influence, we did some good today, we got a lot done. But at the end of the day, everyone just wants to do a good job and do it well. And when they're not there, you should be able to get feedback and have appropriate conversations around it all, and just have a dialogue back and forth. And I think that's back to that personal relationship side, to tie that back to it. If you have those built, you can have those effective conversations. Yeah. Does that mean at some point it's not going to work out for individuals? Yes. I mean, that's just the nature of how it goes. But for the majority of people, it will, and it'll be a positive experience.
Yeah, agreed, man. This has been really insightful. You've thrown out some really good golden nuggets for our listeners and watchers. So very much appreciated, Burke. Any other big final thoughts as you think about the landscape of work and how culture is changing on more of a macro level?
Yeah, you have to continue to watch it. I just think that as you continue to have various generations that enter the workforce and exit the workforce, I mean, things are always shifting and changing. And I think the piece that any leader in any organization has to think about is constantly looking at that landscape, constantly taking the pulse of your organization and where are they at, and continuously looking at ways to try to improve it. And we're no different. We're trying to do that all the time, create the best employee experience that we have. I think one of those mentalities we talk about is like an employee's first day. And what's the first thing that's going to happen when that employee comes home to their spouse, their mom, their dad, whoever it is that they live with, their roommate? The first question they're going to get is, how was your day? And we want to create that experience to be able to go like, it was great. Spring Venture Group's a great place to work. And if we can't create that experience, then we need to shift and make some changes to that. So I think that's that general mentality that if you continue to kind of think about it that way, hopefully you can progress your culture. You can try to fix where you have your areas of opportunity, and just continue to strengthen your strengths. So, you certainly can't just get complacent. It's a competitive world from people wanting to find the best job for them, and culture is just becoming more and more important all the time. So
I agree.
Continuous focus on it, and I'm a big believer in the importance of it.
Yeah, I think if you guys keep doing what you're doing, you're definitely putting yourselves in a position to win. So that's
thanks.
Great stuff, man. Okay, so as we kind of move toward the end, it's time for the shameless plug. Do you have anything personally that you want to throw out there, or something that you maybe want to recommend to our viewers?
Yeah, I thought a little bit about it because I knew the question was coming, that one. And I don't have anything major, but I just finished a great book. So I thought I would at least plug the book. I don't know the author personally. Like, I have no tie-ins with the book at all. It was recommended to me from multiple people. So just know the shameless plug is no monetary value to me.
Yeah.
It just happened to be a really good book. It's called Learned Excellence by Eric Potter. And it's something I've always just been fascinated with, is this good, better, best mentality. And what that meaning, like, what makes people that are really good a little bit better, and then what makes the better just the best. So you think about like the Tiger Woods, the Michael Jordans, and it's like, what made them so much better than so many other people? And certainly talent's always a part of it. So you can't do that, but it's not 100% about that alone. I think it's a mentality, and the book is really all about it's you can learn these things, and it's a little bit back to that fixed growth mindset. Certainly is talked about within it, of you're continuously growing and trying to make yourself better. And this book just happened to resonate a lot with me around various things that I can personally be doing, and other things I can try to help influence with others on, to make them just a little bit better. Think about the world a little bit different. Think about the positive impact you're trying to drive. What's the energy you're giving off? Are you giving positive self-talk? And the book gets into all those things. At the end of the day, it's basically saying these things are learned. They're not innate. So, anybody can continuously make themselves better and perform at those higher levels. And so this is just a book that happened to really resonate with me, and a big fan of it. So thank you to the author again. No connection to it, but it's a great book.
Yeah, I mean, I pulled it up in another tab, and it's got excellent reviews. So you're not alone in your recommendation there.
Yeah, well, good. Awesome. Well, hopefully you take it out and read it. It's a fairly quick read, but it's a lot of really good nuggets and information in it.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're going to do our final sign off, which is our quick fire, this or that. So you ready for that?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. First up, pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Ooh, man, I would go Star Wars. Big fan of Star Wars growing up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gas or electric vehicle?
Gosh, I mean gas, because I drive gas right now. I consider going to electric, and I maybe the next purchase I have, but it's gas right now.
Okay. This one's personalized for you. Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas?
Definitely Kansas. I'm homegrown. I've been here since kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
And married my high school sweetheart. Both sets of parents are still alive and here, still living in the area. So Kansas City has been home for a long period of time, but always on the Kansas side. Now I work on the Missouri side.
Okay.
So I have a fond affinity for it. So I'm not knocking it. And a lot of what we do over there with the Royals and the Chiefs, and they're on the Missouri side. The new women's professional team is over there on the Missouri side as well. So I have an affinity for it, but I've always lived on the Kansas side, and I love the Kansas side. So
that's awesome. That was a fantastic. Usually we do 5 of them, but we're ending there because that was perfect. Okay. I mean, kindergarten resident, married your high school sweetheart. Too good to not end off on that high note. Burke, man, thank you so much for all the wisdom and great conversation. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thanks, Jason. I appreciate the conversation as well. It's been a great time.
Yeah. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in. It's been another episode of the Work Cultured Podcast. We will see you next time.